It is so decided.
You can watch some of this.
The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor.
Have they been talking, or is it just now? Yo, who is that? They got goddamn UN R2D2 in there? That shit's insane. Hey, look, it's look at this guy. Look at this little shit. He decided to come. The Russian Federation UN diplomat decided to be like, hey guys, what's going on? Hey, look at him looking around. Hey guys, what's going on? Hey, nice as hey, Ghana, looking good. Oh, whoa, hey, Ireland, man, I haven't seen you guys in a little bit. What's going on, man? Nice to see you back. Like, what are you doing, man? Look at him. Look at this little shit. So, I guess we all know why we're here today. So we invaded Ukraine. Haha. Yes, Nation High School.
The 8,970th meeting of the Security Council is called to order.
8,000.
The provisional agenda for this meeting is letter dated 28 February 2014 from the Permanent Representative of Ukraine to the United Nations, addressed to the President of the Security Council, S/2014/136. The agenda is adopted.
I love how the Russian Federation is the president of the Security Council. Yeah, dude, let's put Russia as the head of the Security Council. I wonder why we're all here for the 8,000th meeting. Yeah, that's a lot of securities. So, Mr. President, would you like to tell us what's going on? Yeah, the president is like, hey, Ukraine, what's happening? Oh, wait, don't worry, we already know. Wait, don't answer, don't worry. That's what we call a little rhetorical trick.
In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Germany and Ukraine to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, Under Secretary General for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I now give the floor to Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. President, it's with great concern and sadness that I brief the Council this evening on the unfolding dangerous situation in and around Ukraine. In his statement today, the Secretary General was clear. The Secretary General considers the decision of the Russian Federation to recognize the independence of certain areas of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions to be a violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. We very much regret this decision, which risks having regional and global repercussions. We also regret the order to deploy Russian troops into eastern Ukraine, reportedly on a peacekeeping mission. These developments follow the decision to order a mass evacuation of civilian residents of Donetsk and Luhansk into the Russian Federation. We are concerned by the escalating shelling across the contact line, reportedly leading to a number of casualties. OSCE's Special Monitoring Mission has recorded a total of 3,231 ceasefire violations in the Donbas area from 18 to 20 February.
Man, 3,000 in 2 days. Man, Russia, what you doing, bud? What you doing over there, buddy? Never seen Shark this serious before? Well, it seems a little serious, like a serious issue. I don't know if you weren't around during the if you weren't around during the 2020 election, maybe.
1,073 ceasefire violations, including 926 explosions in the Luhansk region, and 2,158 ceasefire violations, including 1,100 explosions in Donetsk region. We remind all involved of their responsibilities under international humanitarian law and human rights law. Although the United Nations is not in a position to verify the numerous claims and allegations made by various actors, We are deeply concerned about the reports of civilian casualties, targeting of civilian infrastructure, and ongoing evacuations. Mr. President, we are extremely concerned about the possible implications of the latest developments for the existing negotiation frameworks. Amid the current risks and uncertainty, it is even more important to pursue dialogue. Negotiation is the only way to address the existing differences among the key actors regarding regional security issues and the settlement of the conflict in eastern Ukraine in accordance with Security Council.
Oh, okay. Just so you know, as well, there will be some weirdos who will try to lie to you and say that um Russia isn't doing anything, and it's like basically Ukraine, or saying that it's Ukraine and Russia together doing a lot of these violations. It's untrue. The violations are from Russia. Russia's been violating. Russia's been shelling. Russia's been funding and helping push in rebellion groups that have been bombing cars. They've been bombing they've been bombing children's schools. It's Russia. Ukraine actually has been taking a incredibly restrained stance to what's going on. Russia's been bombing them. Russia's been killing Ukrainians. Russia's been doing all of these things and provoking them into war. And thankfully, Ukraine has been incredibly principled, and they've stood in the face of all of it, and not to provoke anything even further. So I really like that. It's super cool. So a lot of respect towards Zelensky and Ukraine for that, because Russia has just been trying to kill people and invade Ukraine, invade parts of Ukraine, like the DNR, LNR. Unfortunate. So yeah, some of Russia's been funding separatists, and also Russia's been sending in soldiers, unmarked soldiers, on behalf of the separatists as well. Basically, it's like it's basically like if Mexico, you can imagine it like if Mexico sent in its own like Mexican forces as unmarked, as like unmarked people with guns and vests to go in when Trump supporters were like raiding the Capitol. Imagine that, and that's basically what Russia's been trying to do all across Ukraine, specifically these like areas in Donbass. I just don't see how they can look at the Russian troops on the border since December and say that it's Ukraine is their provocateur. That's because they've been pushing misinformation. That's the point, right? That's the point. Is that a lot of people, they just want to be like, a lot of people just want to take one side, and so that's just what I want to go with. So any misinformation that they could take and just that already proves the narrative that they've said to themselves, like it's this person's fault or that person's fault, they're just going to run with it. And Russia's been putting out a lot of misinformation. Once again, remember, they've been pushing a lot of false flag ops. And so, like, once again, remember, this whole evacuation of Donbass was prompted by Russia saying that Ukraine was going to start to, in the middle of a possible war with thousands of Russian troops at the border, Ukraine was going to start to send troops and invade itself, send troops into Donbass and start fucking killing people and setting off chemical weapons in the streets of Donbass. That's what Russia told the people of Donbass, and that's why they're evacuating, and told them that they could go to Russia to be safe. That's what's going on, right? That's why this whole like that's what they've said, to give themselves the ability to invade this part of Ukraine, and like evacuate people who are already aligned with them into Russia, just in case if like anything happens, they could push in without getting like their people hurt, right? Or people who are already like allied with them hurt. That's the big thing. And one of my favorite streamers is watching this live. unfortunate, isn't it?
Council Resolution 2202. Before the current already dangerous conditions escalate further, we call on all relevant actors to focus their efforts on an immediate cessation of hostilities. Civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected, and actions and statements that may worsen the situation must be avoided. Over the past few weeks, key actors have been engaged in intense diplomatic efforts to avert a new eruption of conflict in the heart of Europe. The Secretary General fully supports these efforts and has deplored even the possibility that a new conflict could break out. Mr. President, we are committed to our long-term partnership with Ukraine, a founding member of the United Nations, as it continues to pursue the democratic reform agenda 30 years after independence. And once again, we reiterate the full commitment of the United Nations to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, according to General Assembly resolutions. Throughout the 8 years of conflict in eastern Ukraine, the United Nations has continued to provide life-saving humanitarian support to all in need, as well as human rights-related work. During this difficult period, we are committed to stay and deliver and remain fully operational in Ukraine, including in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The safety and security of our staff must be respected by all parties. Mr. President, the next hours and days will be critical. The risk of major conflict is real and needs to be prevented at all costs. I can assure you of the full commitment of the Secretary General to work toward a diplomatic resolution of the current crisis. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing. I now give the floor to those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the Permanent Representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since World War II, the United Nations Charter, the key tenets of which this council is mandated to uphold, has stood as a bulwark to the worst impulses of empires and autocrats. Earlier today, Russia's President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia will recognize as independent states the so-called DPR and LPR regions, the sovereign territory of Ukraine, an area controlled by Russia's proxies since 2014. He has since announced that he will place Russian troops in these regions. He calls them peacekeepers. This is nonsense. We know what they really are. In doing so, he has put before the world a choice. We must meet the moment, and we must not look away. History tells us that looking the other way in the face of such hostility will be a far more costly path. Russia's clear attack on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity is unprovoked. It is an attack on Ukraine's status as a UN member state. It violates a basic principle of international law, and it defies our charter. What is more, this move by President Putin is clearly the basis for Russia's attempt to create a pretext for a further invasion of Ukraine. The consequences of this action will be felt far beyond Ukraine's borders. We do not have to guess at President Putin's motives. Today, President Putin made a series of outrageous false claims about Ukraine aimed at creating a pretext for war, and immediately thereafter announced Russian troops are entering the Donbass. He claimed that Ukraine is seeking nuclear weapons from the West. This is not true. Ukraine is in fact one of only 4 countries to have voluntarily surrendered their nuclear weapons. The United States and our allies have no intention of supplying nuclear weapons to Ukraine, and Ukraine doesn't want them.
That's true. So, back in the day, are there captions? Yeah, I think so. Yeehaw, you can get a little bit of captions. So yeah, Ukraine did give up their nuclear arsenal in a contract. So they gave up their nuclear arsenal for, you know, a couple of reasons. But one of the big reasons for why they did it, that a lot of people would say that they gave it up for, is because, yeah, Budapest. Yeah. So the Budapest Memorandum, which was a written guarantee from many countries, including Russia, that their borders were going to be safe and they would not be like invaded and soaked up into like another nation, right? So they can stay sovereign and stay independent. That's what all of that was about. Obviously, Russia doesn't really want to stick by that anymore.
And then President Putin asserted that Russia today has a rightful claim to all territories from the Russian Empire, the same Russian Empire from before the Soviet Union, from over 100 years ago. That includes all of Ukraine. It includes Finland. It includes Belarus and Georgia and Moldova, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Lithuania,
No,
Latvia,
not
and
Uzbekistan.
Estonia. It includes parts of Poland and Turkey. In essence, Putin wants the world to travel back in time, to a time before the United Nations, to a time when empires ruled the world. But the rest of the world has moved forward. It is not 1919. It is 2022. The United Nations was founded on the principle of decolonization, not recolonization. And we believe the vast majority of UN member states and the UN Security Council are committed to moving forward, not going back in time. The consequences of Russia's actions will be dire across Ukraine, across Europe, and across the globe. In our past 2 meetings on Ukraine, I've mentioned nearly 3 million Ukrainians will need food, shelter, and life-saving assistance right now. The UN estimates the humanitarian toll will expand significantly should Russia further invade. Already, Russian proxies dramatically increased shelling and artillery fire over the weekend, killing Ukrainian civilians and soldiers. If Russia invades Ukraine even further, we will see a devastating loss of life, unimaginable suffering. Millions of displaced people will create a refugee crisis across Europe. Nevertheless, Russia has declined repeated entreaties to state its intentions before the world, including by Secretary Blinken in the Security Council last Thursday. Colleagues, President Putin is testing our international system. He is testing our resolve and seeing just how far he can push us all. He wants to demonstrate that through force, he can make a farce of the UN. We must act together in response to this crisis. Over the past few weeks, the world has heard the other 14 members of the Security Council speak with one voice, asking Russia to pursue diplomacy. Other members of this council, even those who often align with Russia on other matters, have been clear that the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of every UN member state should be respected and safeguarded, including Ukraine. That this is a basic norm of international relations and that it embodies the purpose of the UN Charter. The sequence of events that Secretary Blinken spelled out for this council last Thursday appear to be proceeding exactly as he predicted. Today, President Putin has torn the Minsk agreement to shreds. We have been clear that we do not believe he will stop at that. In light of President Putin's latest actions, we must all stand up for the principles upon which this organization was founded. President Biden issued an executive order today that will prohibit new investment, trade, and financing in the so-called DPR and LPR regions. Tomorrow, the United States will take further measures to hold Russia
Oh my gosh, he stole her paper. Oh, she's insane.
accountable for this clear violation of international law and Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. But we and our partners have been clear that there will be a swift and severe response were Russia to further invade Ukraine. In this moment, no one can stand on the sidelines. We must make it clear that an attack on Ukraine is an attack on the sovereignty of every UN member state and the UN Charter, and that it will be met with swift and severe consequences. We continue to believe that the diplomatic table is the only place where responsible nations resolve their differences. That is the only place to preserve peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. I give the floor to the permanent representative of Albania.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me thank you, as GD Carlo, for another clear and comprehensive briefing to the Security Council on this issue. Albania condemns, in the strongest terms, Russia's decision to recognize non-government controlled areas of Ukraine as independent entities. This is a breach of international law, an affront to the UN Charter, another blatant violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and it puts an end to the Minsk agreements. This act of the Russian Federation is null and void, has no basis, and has no international legal validity.
Okay, so one thing, I'm going to be banning people spreading just like straight up misinformation. in chat, and so it's going to remain that way. Once again, let me tell you guys, there are some horrible, terrible human beings out there who want Ukrainian people to die, specifically because there are some people who are called some people who are Nazis who fought for Ukrainian sovereignty. Basically, that's what their goal is. They wake up and they say it would be sick if every single Ukrainian person died because there's like 50 people who call themselves Nazis in Ukraine. Unironically, that's what they believe. I think that's a horrible thing, and I don't want you in my chat because if you believe something like that. Okay, so here's the thing. There is a group in Ukraine that are neo-Nazis. That's true. And when back in 2014 when Ukraine was getting back in 2014 when Ukraine was getting on the cusp of being invaded and part of their country was invaded by Russia, they absorbed part of a battalion militia group that identified as like Nazis to help them fight back, to help them in the case of which they'll have to defend their country against Ukrainian forces, right? That's what happened. Is Ukraine ruled by Nazis? No. And I'm sorry, Russia isn't any. Russia is actually, I would say, Russia is much worse when it comes to racism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia, and anti-Semitism than Ukraine has ever since they broke off from the USSR. Ever since Ukraine broke off from the USSR, they've only gotten less anti-Semitic. I'm sorry, Russia has not become any less anti-Semitic from when they shipped off Jewish people to Auschwitz-Birkenau. Okay, I'm sorry, that hasn't really happened. And if they could do it again, if that meant that they could absorb some other countries back into their sphere of influence, they'd do it again. And it doesn't really matter. That's what Russia is, and that's what they've always been. Like, the Russian government are not good people, and they don't care. And they'd kill as many people as possible as long as they can reclaim their, like, nationalist land. It's pretty fucking bad. Yeah, and they commit hate crimes 24/7 against, like, LGBT people. At the very least, Ukraine would, if they were to join NATO, would be de-radicalized from a lot of those positions and would have a reason to push their country towards doing those sorts of things. Russia is just a bad place filled with bad people who run it. I'm not saying every Russian person is a bad person. I don't know many Russian people. I'm specifically talking about the government. They're bad people, okay? And so I understand when you're on the cusp of being of your country being destroyed by a genuinely evil nation filled with evil people who want you dead or like to kiss your feet, okay, or to kiss their feet. All right, I would understand that if there's someone, even if they're a bad person, that you would ally with them in that moment to help you, if they're willing to help you. I could understand that. I mean, we allied with the French against Britain when we during the Revolutionary War. I mean, where I can 100% understand allying with bad people, specifically because if you have like similar goals in that moment. Okay, I understand. I get it, and so I empathize with Ukraine there. I empathize with Ukraine there, 100%. Yeah, specifically the French. That's true. That's true. That's true. That's pretty true. That's true. That's pretty true. So yeah, that's basically it. That's the history, and that's why people keep saying that. And so what they want to do is conflate the fact that Russia used the help of a battalion that has nothing and does nothing and represents less than 2% of the population who even like in any way support them, because they had a political party. They got less than 2% of the vote. And even the people who vote for them aren't people who are just straight up Nazis. They could have just like not like the other parties, or they could have just been lied to about what they really believe. So they allied with these small amounts of people who they don't give weapons to anymore. And so what they want to do is eat up that Russian propaganda and make it so that you are now like unsure about who you should support. They're literally trying to pull like a Fox News level conspiracy on these people, so you can either sit idly by or defend Ukrainians being murdered because Ukraine believes that he deserves for them to be subservient to him. That's why. All right. So if you hear that again, understand that's where that talking point came from. It's from bad people who want Ukrainians to die. That's where it's from. And there's no other reason for why they say it. They're bad people who want Ukrainians to die. That's why they say it. So yes. So I'll be banning people who say stuff like that. I think that's a bad thing to believe, and I don't want you a part of this community. So yeah.
We call on the Security Council and all the United Nations member states to reject and condemn it firmly. Albania reiterates its firm position in support of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Mr. President, less than a week ago, we were sitting in this very room at the Russian initiative to discuss the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Today, we meet at an emergency meeting exactly because of the Russian Federation decision to violate the very Minsk agreements. This is a disrespect not only to the Council and its decisions, but for the entire universal principles of international law Russia is set to respect and protect. The whole world has witnessed how the Russian Federation has continuously worked to undermine the sovereignty of Ukraine and to determine its geopolitical orientation. What happened today is nothing less but a bis repetita of what we have seen in Georgia in 2008 and with Crimea in 2014, meaning an aggression by fabrication of phantom republics. Who is next? Every UN member state should be alarmed and realize, eyes wide open, the consequences of instrumentalization of national minorities as a weapon to undermine sovereign states, threaten regional and international peace and security. We should not accept the made in Russia model of destabilization be exported to other parts of Europe or anywhere else. We reiterate our demand for the removal of the military troops from the Ukrainian border and from the occupied territories of Ukraine, including troops disguised as peacekeepers when they are simply aggressors.
I'm surprised he did it. It can only end badly for Russia. Well, it didn't end badly for them when they invaded Ukraine. My bad. When they invaded Ukraine and took Crimea, they got to get away with it. They just got to get away with it. And that was under the Obama administration. And so the thing is why Putin thinks that he may be able to get away with some of this, with being able to maybe not do like a full-scale invasion, but be able to like pick off every couple years, pick off like another chunk and another chunk and another chunk of Ukraine, is because only if they do like a little bit of it, they won't get clapped. And so that'll like build up over time. How he'll be able, this is just like one theory that's out there. It'll be able to build up over time where he could like take control of a decent chunks of Eastern Ukraine, and be able to expand that over time by pushing these false flags and pushing false rebellions and saying that they need to move in for peacekeeping, and there are people to be able to do that over and over again in like small chunks, and evacuating people in small chunks. Because nothing bad will come from it, specifically to the nation of Russia. Because even like the small sanctions that we have just against like the places in Donbass, like I don't think Putin will care that much, right? It'll hurt the people who live in Donbass, but for Moscow and the rest of Russia, they'll just be chilling. Right? They'll literally just be chilling and be able to do basically whatever they want. They don't really care. It won't hurt them. And then they can just blame the West for why they're suffering in that little area, and it's not their fault, and give them more of a reason to stick around and maybe like foment more discord between like the people who live there and the rest of Ukraine. So he doesn't really care about that. Actually, it can be like good for him for that sort of stuff. So if he can just pick it off in like little pieces, he can get away with it. Also, a lot of the Security Council that was a part of the Obama administration when nothing bad happened really to Russia when they invaded Crimea are also a part of Biden's administration. He brought all those people back. He brought the gang back together, and so Russia decided to do the same thing that they were doing before back together.
Aggressors. Albania calls on the Russian Federation to stop its fait accompli policy, revoke its illegal decision, and engage seriously and in good faith with diplomatic talks and give a chance to the Minsk agreements. Dear colleagues, this is yet another critical moment for Ukraine. The UN should remain actively engaged and committed together with regional organizations to the right of the Ukrainian people to live in peace and freedom. We welcome the statement of the Secretary General and echo his call for all relevant actors to prioritize diplomacy to address all issues peacefully as the only way to move forward. And I thank you.
Я благодарю
I thank the representative of Albania for his statement. I now give the floor to the permanent representative of France.
President, I would like to thank the USG for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs for her statement, and I'd also like to thank the Secretary General for his action and for his very clear words. I welcome the presence of Ukraine, and France supported their request for an emergency meeting given the extreme gravity of the situation. France condemns Russia's recognition of the separatist eastern regions of Ukraine. This is not just a further attack on the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine, but it is also a violation of the fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter.
You're right. He do be looking very French. That's true. You're like, this French guy looks kind of French. He do be looking kind of French. I will agree.
Of Resolution 2202 of this Council, which endorsed the Minsk agreements and the commitments undertaken by Russia, which were confirmed at the very highest level these last few days. On the 17th of February, the Russian representative publicly acknowledged before this Council that there is no alternative to the Minsk agreements and that they were the only internationally recognized legal basis to solve the conflict in Ukraine. But today, the reality is quite different. Russia is choosing the path of confrontation in spite of the incessant efforts to achieve a de-escalation over the last few
Yeah, everyone's condemning Russia for doing what they're doing.
weeks and the last few days, notably by President Macron working with the German Chancellor. We are continuing these efforts, and we call on Russia to match its words with its deeds when it claims to be in favor of dialogue, and to go back on its decision to recognize the separatist entities. With our European partners, we are preparing targeted sanctions against those who took part in this illegal decision. In the context of the heightened tensions on Ukraine's borders provoked by the strengthening of Russian military activity, we are concerned by this additional step in the destabilization by Russia and by the threat that weighs on European security. France welcomes the restraint that Ukraine has shown in these difficult circumstances. We express our full solidarity with the people and the government of Ukraine. We call on Russia to refrain from any other actions of destabilization, notably those that may undermine the security and the safety of civilian populations and put them in danger. We are particularly concerned by the decision of President Putin to send the army to the separatist territories under the pretext of peacekeeping. This would be another flagrant violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity. President, France will continue to mobilize in support of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank the representative of France. I now give the floor to the representative of India.
Yeehaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by thanking Undersecretary General Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing. We have been closely following the evolving developments relating to Ukraine, including developments along the eastern border of Ukraine and the related announcement by the Russian Federation. The escalation of tension along the border of Ukraine with the Russian Federation is a matter of deep concern. These developments have the potential to undermine peace and security of the region. We call for restraint on all sides. The immediate priority is de-escalation of tensions, taking into account the legitimate security interests of all countries and aimed towards securing long-term peace and stability in the region and beyond. We are convinced that this issue can only be resolved through diplomatic dialogue. We need to give space to the recent initiatives undertaken by parties which seek to diffuse tensions. In this context, we welcome the intense efforts underway, including through the Trilateral Contact Group and under the Normandy format. We need parties to exert greater efforts to bridge divergent interests. We cannot afford to have a military escalation. As we have emphasized before, the Minsk agreements provide a basis for a negotiated and peaceful settlement, and we need greater efforts to find common ground to facilitate the implementation of the provisions of the Minsk agreements, including key security and political aspects. As we have time and again emphasized, constructive diplomacy is the need of the hour to avoid scaling up of tensions. The safety and security of civilians are essential. More than 20,000 Indian students and nationals live and study in different parts of Ukraine, including in its border areas. The well-being of Indian nationals is a priority to us. In conclusion, we strongly emphasize the vital need for all sides to maintain international peace and security by exercising the utmost restraint and intensifying diplomatic efforts to ensure that a mutually amicable solution is arrived at the earliest. I thank you.
I thank the representative of India.
Are they capable? At this point, it's going to take some like some big issue, right? I'm not sure how much further they can go from this. I haven't read up into like the entire history of Ukraine, so I'm not sure how much further they can go. Here, let me. We can play it a little bit, but I'll keep it mute. You can read the subtitles if you need them. I'm not sure how much further they can go from here into Ukraine. I'll have to look into that specifically, but yeah, I don't know. It may be this is where they stop and until they pick it up for I don't know in another couple years or something when they're able to destabilize some more parts of Ukraine. If nothing is like systematically done to like sanction or militarily stop them, more likely than not sanction.
Of extraordinary importance and relevance. We are all aware how critical the situation has become. Brazil is following the latest developments with extreme concern. In the present
This is the whitest Brazilian person I've seen in my entire
council, life. In representation of the international community, must reiterate calls for immediate de-escalation and our steadfast commitment in support of political and diplomatic efforts to create the conditions for a peaceful solution to the crisis. The collective security system of the United Nations rests ultimately on the pillar of international law. This, in its turn, rests upon core principles enshrined in the Charter, the sovereign equality and the territorial integrity of member states, the restraint in the use or in the threat of use of force, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. Yet this pillar and principles will not yield results unless legitimate concerns of all parties are taken into consideration, and unless there is full respect for the Charter and for existing commitments such as the Minsk agreements. In this vein, we renew our appeal to all concerned parties to maintain dialogue in a spirit of openness, understanding, flexibility, and a sense of urgency.
What an incredibly lame milquetoast
and in the wider region. A first inescapable objective is an immediate
comment from
ceasefire,
Brazil
with a comprehensive disengagement of troops and military equipment on the ground. Such a military disengagement will be an important step to build trust among the parties, to strengthen diplomacy, and to seek a sustainable solution for the crisis. We firmly believe that this Council must live up to its core responsibility to help the parties engage in a meaningful and effective dialogue so as to achieve a solution that effectively addresses the security concerns within the region. Make no mistake, at the end of the day, we are talking about the lives of innocent men, women, and children on the ground. I thank you, Mr. President.
Weak. How lame, dude.
I thank the representative of Brazil for his...
Also, yeah, with these like South American countries, a lot of the times they're kind of like a lot of colorism came in and they're ruled by like a gang. A lot of them that haven't been able to form like the most stable democracies since we like fucked their shit up are ruled by like a gang of like white people who basically are of like white countrymen and women who are hell bent on like destroying the indigenous population and asserting themselves as like the like God supreme emperors of the nation. This happened in what was it, Bolivia? This happened in Bolivia as well, with their like weirdo like borderline fascist government who was hell bent on literally killing the like exterminating the indigenous population there. It's really fucked up. This happens a lot sometimes. So yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Happens in Brazil. Happened in Chile.
Statement. I now give the floor to the representative, the permanent representative of the United Kingdom.
Mr.
It
President,
do be partly our fault.
we meet this evening because earlier today, President Putin announced the Russian Federation's recognition of the independence of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic.
This is just for me, Tory. She do be looking like a Tory. You're right. She do be looking like a Margaret Thatcher too, Electric Boogaloo. Here's my thing, okay? I think every single time someone is speaking on behalf of the UK, I think they're crazy ass shoulder pads. I think that they should be Irish or Scottish. Okay? I think that they should be Irish or Scottish. I don't think they should be Welsh or British. I think they should be Irish or Scottish, one of the two. Mostly because I don't hear them that often, and I think that they're cool. I don't hear them that often. I think that they're cool. Wales is just kind of like mini Britain. I think it should be like a Northern Irish person or a Scottish person, one of the two. I mean, it depends. It doesn't really matter which one do you pick to me personally, because to me, Irish people and Scottish people sound exactly the same. So no matter which one you pick, I'll be happy. I'm just saying that I want it to be one of them.
And issued a decree to send Russian military forces into Ukraine as so-called peacekeepers. Colleagues, the actions Russia has chosen today will have severe and far-reaching consequences. First,
Northern Ireland's also island. Listen, for one, I don't really care. That sounds like a personal problem between them. All right? I'm not a part of this. I don't really care what they do. All right? It doesn't matter to me. Also, I like the other part of Ireland isn't a part of the UK, so I highly doubt someone from not UK Ireland is going to be head of the UN for the UK at the UN. I'm just saying that I highly doubt they're going to pick someone from not Northern Ireland. It seems pretty reasonable that they're going to pick someone from Northern Ireland. But once again, I don't know. What are they going to do? Bomb me or something? Oh, boo-hoo. I don't know, bro. That sounds like a personal problem. I mean, unfortunate for him. I'm just saying, it sounds like a personal problem. Yes? Yeah. It'd be that way.
to human life. An invasion of Ukraine unleashes the forces of war, death, and destruction.
Listen, they can try, okay? I'm in America. We ain't like we ain't like Europe where you guys don't have guns, okay? They can try.
On the people of Ukraine. The humanitarian impact will be terrible on civilians fleeing the fighting. We know that women and children will suffer most. Second,
yo, what is this
to the
misandry?
sovereignty
What
and
about the
territorial
men?
integrity of a UN member state, which is protected and guaranteed by the UN Charter. As the Secretary General said earlier, Russia's decisions are a violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the UN Charter. Third, to international law. The actions taken today make mockery of the commitments Russia has made through the Budapest Memorandum and the Minsk agreements, endorsed by Security Council resolution.
Yeah, wait, is North Korea here? I want North Korea to speak. When is North Korea going to be able to say their piece? Let them speak. Let them speak. I want the North Korean diplomat to be here. Where are they? Bring them back. Bring them in. They should have sent the queen. They should not have sent the queen, bro. They should not have sent the queen. Bro, if they would have sent the queen, okay, this is what everybody would have heard. When she steps, she's too old, man. She's on her last legs. Like, she needs to just like chill. Poor woman. Just needs, yeah, bring Kim Jong-il, bro. She needs to just chill. This is what everybody would have heard when she like steps off the goddamn plane. Like, leave that woman alone. Leave that woman alone. Let her just chill in her castle or whatever. let her just chill in her castle or whatever. Leave her alone. All right. This is not ageism. What is she, like 100? You can't do ageism when you're 100. You're 100. You're living way past your due date has been passed. Okay. All right, when you're 100, every day is a blessing. Yeah, when you're almost 100, every single day is a blessing. Every day is a blessing. She's lucky she's still here. Okay? You can't do ageism when you're almost 100. If she was 70, sure. 80 even? Okay, I feel you. Yeah, my girl's on borrowed time. All right? She should be happy that she's still around. 100, that's a lot. That's a lot. Every day is a blessing. She should be yeah, 95? I mean, come on now. Come on now. 95, that's old. That's heckin' old. This is not ageism. A lot of us won't make it there, okay? This is not ageism. The Queen's Corgi? They should have sent the Queen's Corgi. That would have been sick. All right, here, listen. I'm going to get up for a second. I'm going to go pee. Well, I'll keep this playing and I can still listen to it. I'll be right back.
2202. In seeking to redraw borders by force, Russia's actions show blatant contempt for international law. The United Kingdom will be announcing new sanctions on Russia in response to its breach of international law and attack on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. There will be severe economic consequences to its actions. Colleagues, now, more than ever, the Council must shoulder its responsibilities for peace and security and defend the principles of the UN Charter. The Council must be united in calling on Russia to de-escalate immediately, in condemning aggression against a sovereign nation and defending the territorial integrity of Ukraine, in calling on Russia to respect its obligations under the Charter to the peaceful resolution of disputes. Russia has brought us to the brink. We urge Russia to step back. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico.
Señor Presidente.
President, we are grateful for the briefing by the USG on the current situation in Ukraine. We are following with concern the recent developments in the situation in the east of Ukraine. In these circumstances, it is critical that those actions exacerbating this crisis cease. The Security Council, through Resolution 2202, supported a range of measures as the only way to resolve the situation in the east of Ukraine. This resolution must be respected. Specifically, in this particular case,
okay, I was a little
fundamental
surprised.
principles of the UN Charter.
When I was in the bathroom, I heard like Señor Presidente, and I'm like, oh, sick. Oh, woman's talking. And then just out of nowhere, some dude just took over. I'm like, what's happening? Is she being mansplained at the UN? What the hell's going on? All right, she's just being translated. Okay.
Are being violated. Refraining from threatening to use or using force in international relations, respect for the territorial integrity and political independence of states, and non-intervention in the internal affairs of states. It is therefore unacceptable that over the last few days, the shellings, explosions, and other ceasefire violations have increased, according to reports from the OSCE monitoring mission. We urge the parties to immediately end these actions. We wish to recall that in this same room a few days ago, Russia made a categorical statement saying that they would not invade Ukraine. We hope that they will comply fully with that statement. Mexico reiterates its commitment to the respect for the sovereignty, political independence, and the territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, pursuant to the United Nations Charter, international law, and the relevant resolutions of the UN Security Council and General Assembly, particularly resolutions 2625 and 3314. We once again reiterate our appeal to resume the path of de-escalation, diplomacy, and dialogue. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Mexico for her statement. I give the floor.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want World War III either. I want to play that new Kirby game with Mouthful Kirby. I want to play Elden Ring and not have to worry about doing like 16-hour streams of watching like Eastern European people kill each other. Oh, hey, look, it's Ireland.
And for the international norms and principles that all of us around this table have a responsibility to defend. It's a moment we had hoped to avoid. A moment that should have been averted by diplomacy and dialogue, We must respond to it by speaking clearly and honestly about this grave situation and how we can resolve it peacefully. So let me be clear about where we stand. Ireland's commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognised borders is unwavering. Ireland believes in and is fully committed to the core principles enshrined in the UN Charter. These include the sovereign, equality and territorial integrity of states. Ukraine has the same fundamental right as every other sovereign and independent state to choose its own foreign policy and to ensure the security and defence of its own territory. The commitments we make as members of the UN are binding on every one of us, no exceptions. Mr. President, last Thursday, during the meeting organised by the Russian Federation on the Minsk agreements, we heard from Deputy Minister Vershinin that the goal of that meeting was for the Security Council to affirm that there was no alternative to this milestone document. We believe that the Council did just that. Yet now, 4 days later, President Putin has decided to recognise as independent entities the non-government controlled areas of Donetsk and Luhansk and to order troops into those two regions of Ukraine. This is the second time in less than 10 years that the Russian Federation has violated Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It is a flagrant violation of international law. In taking this unilateral step, Russia has abandoned the Minsk agreements and cast into doubt all the diplomatic efforts of past weeks. Ireland commends Ukraine for the restraint it has shown in the face of Russia's military build-up at its border and the provocation of the recognition of the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Ireland, along with our EU partners, supports a clear and unequivocal response to this violation of Ukraine's sovereignty. The Russian Federation's unilateral actions serve only to further raise tensions. Ireland once again calls for calm, de-escalation and the pursuit of diplomacy. Even if that call has not yet been heard, it's a call worth making again tonight. We need to see sustained and credible moves on the ground toward de-escalation of this crisis. We urge Russia to reverse the recognition, withdraw its military forces and return to discussions within the Normandy format. Mr. President, all signatories of the Minsk agreements agreed on the need for the OSCE's special monitoring mission safe and secure access to the entire territory of Ukraine. The mandate of the SMM was agreed by all 57 OSCE participating states. At this sensitive time, it is imperative that the SMM be given the full access agreed in its mandate. We commend those who have engaged in dialogue and urge them to redouble their efforts to seek a peaceful resolution to this perilous situation. We owe nothing less to the people of Ukraine. We call on all parties to ensure the protection of civilians, as well as refraining from any actions that would escalate the situation. Mr. President, Ukraine has already endured 8 years of bitter conflict with over 14,000 lives lost. The people of eastern Ukraine, in particular, have suffered from years of insecurity, humanitarian crisis, and human rights violations and abuses. This Council and its members have the responsibility to work to resolve this conflict, rather than yield to a grim new chapter which will inflict further misery on Ukraine and its people. This is the time to show the courage to pull back from the precipice and return to dialogue and diplomacy. Mr. President, we all need to demonstrate our faith in the value of diplomacy tonight. Thank you.
Sick. Another great banger from Ireland. Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody who knows about bad shit happening in their land being invaded and mistreated, definitely Ireland. Oh, the UAE is here too? Huh, interesting. Rom, thank you so much for the 2 months in a row. Sharkus Bog, appreciate you. Thank you so much for remaining a part of the frenzy.
The importance of de-escalation and restraint to maintain regional and international security and stability. We believe now is the time to engage constructively and in good faith to address the current situation and mitigate its impact, of course, on any civilians and civilian infrastructure, and to chart a diplomatic path forward. Mr. President, the UAE reiterates the importance of dialogue, as others have said, de-escalation, diplomacy, and to continue all efforts to reach a peaceful solution consistent with international law and the Charter of the United Nations, particularly the principles of territorial integrity, independence, sovereignty, and good neighbourliness. And we believe the Minsk agreements form a good basis for that, and that adherence to these principles is indeed a sustainable pillar of a peaceful pathway forward. And I thank you.
Я благодарю.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for her statement.
Incredibly short
I
statement,
give the floor
I guess.
to the permanent representative of Kenya.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Undersecretary General Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing. We meet tonight on the brink of a major conflict in Ukraine. The diplomacy we urged on the 17th of February is failing. The territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine stands breached. The Charter of the United Nations continues to wilt under the relentless assault of the powerful. In one moment, it is invoked with reverence by the very same countries who then turn their backs on it in pursuit of objectives diametrically opposed to international peace and security.
Whoa, Kenya's going in.
In the last two meetings on the situation in Ukraine and the buildup of forces by the Russian Federation, Kenya urged that diplomacy be given a chance. Our cry was not heeded, and more importantly, the Charter's demand for states to settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered has been profoundly undermined. Today, the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity and political independence of Ukraine has been effected. Kenya is gravely concerned by the announcement made by the Russian Federation to recognize Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine as independent states. In our considered view, this action and announcement breaches the territorial integrity of Ukraine. We do not deny that there may be serious security concerns in these regions, but they cannot justify today's recognition of these regions as independent states, not when there are multiple diplomatic tracks available and underway that have the ability to offer peaceful solutions. Mr. President, this situation echoes our history. Kenya and almost every African country was birthed by the ending of empire. Our borders were not of our own drawing. They were drawn in the distant colonial metropoles of London, Paris, and Lisbon, with no regard for the ancient nations that they cleaved apart. Woo! Today, across the border of every single African country live our countrymen with whom we share deep historical, cultural, and linguistic bonds. At independence, had we chosen to pursue states on the basis of ethnic, racial, or religious homogeneity, we would still be waging bloody wars these many decades later. Instead, we agreed that we would settle for the borders that we inherited, but we would still pursue continental political, economic, and legal integration. Rather than form nations that looked ever backwards into history with a dangerous nostalgia, we chose to look forward to a greatness none of our many nations and peoples had ever known. We chose to follow the rules of the Organization of African Unity and the United Nations Charter, not because our borders satisfied us, but because we wanted something greater, forged in peace. We believe that all states formed from empires that have collapsed or retreated have many peoples in them yearning for integration with peoples in neighboring states.
Finally,
this
someone
is normal
takes down
and understandable. After all,
what Russia's
who does not want to be joined to their brethren and to make common purpose with them? However, Kenya rejects such a yearning from being pursued by force. We must complete our recovery from the embers of dead empires in a way that does not plunge us back into new forms of domination and oppression. We rejected irredentism and expansionism on any basis, including racial, ethnic, religious, or cultural factors. We reject it again today. Kenya registers its strong concern and opposition to the recognition of Donetsk and Luhansk as independent states. We further strongly condemn the trend in the last few decades of powerful states, including members of this Security Council, breaching international law with little regard. Multilateralism lies on its deathbed tonight. It has been assaulted today as it has been by other powerful states in the recent past. We call on all members to rally behind the Secretary General in asking him to rally us all to the standard that defends multilateralism. We also call on him to bring his good offices to bear to help the concerned parties resolve this situation by peaceful means. Let me conclude, Mr. President, by reaffirming Kenya's respect for the territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Kenya.
That's amazing. Yeah, finally someone's taking down Russia for. Finally, someone's taking down Russia for what they're doing, which is trying to rebuild empires. I'm very happy. You know, I actually wasn't expecting this. This is pretty freaking sick. I'm glad someone's standing up and saying something about it, because we know for a fact fucking Russia definitely wasn't going to. Boo, preach.
To address concerns over the implementation of the agreement. When Ghana joined this organization in 1957, we were under no illusions that the international order was perfect. However, we were convinced, and still are, that the principles of sovereign equality of states, which constitute the basis of this organization and our multilateral order, is the veritable foundation for a stable world. We believe that the United Nations represents the best attempt at maintaining peace across the nations, forging relations and cooperation between and among our peoples, and holding forth the prospect of a better tomorrow. It is for this reason that Ghana, like many other members of the organization, has solemnly committed itself to uphold the Charter and international law. We believe that through multilateralism we can improve cooperation to make the world a better place for its citizens and for generations unborn. Through this organization and our common actions on principles such as self-determination within the context of the United Nations, the countries that existed under colonial rule have been assisted to become sovereign and politically independent states. By its sheer convening power, this organization has set out a pathway for dialogue for all its members, regardless of differences in political ideology, and encourage the development and maintenance of friendly relations.
I'm really glad these African countries are given a chance to stand out.
By the actions of this organization, the rights of people across the world have become more respected by their governments, and their well-being better guaranteed. Mr. President, I will be clear. Ghana supports the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine, the borders of which it joined this United Nations as a bona fide member. We do not support any actions that violate Ukraine's sovereignty, political independence, and territorial integrity. By our principles, Ghana does not recognize any entity outside of the clear arrangements that have been established by the Charter and the principles of international law for the recognition of states. As an international community, we have pulled back from many dangerous scenarios when logic and reason have prevailed. And on this occasion, we re-echo the voice of the coalition of peace for restraint by all parties. While the sound of war may be loud, the voice of peace runs deeper. We urge restraint on all unsettled but accepted situations across the globe and remind member states of the need to protect the collective security mechanism, which requires adherence to the core principles of the Charter and international law. The true test of greatness lies not in one's ability to use power, but in the capacity to constrain its use when that would be an obvious choice by those of a lesser capacity. We hope that within this council, and perhaps outside of it too, we shall find a resolution of the existing situation in Ukraine, and in a manner that does not impair the mechanisms for peace. While Ghana and other African member states have always held that the use of the veto power is anachronistic and counterproductive to the effective workings of our modern arrangements for maintaining global peace and security, that concern has never been rendered more acute than in situations such as the one we now see. Even though it may be enough on many occasions to say that we are against the actions of a member state, that goes against the international norms. On this occasion, we are all required to do more in reaffirming our common commitment to the purposes and principles of the Charter. Besides the immediate cost of instability, all countries, including the most vulnerable in the developing world, may pay a steep price for the actions that destabilize a part of Europe. As we note with great concern reports of the foreign troops being sent across the borders of Ukraine, we reiterate our continuing concern over the situation of the civilian populations in Donetsk and Luhansk. We urge all parties to strictly comply with the tenets of international law. Mr. President, we may be at the precipice, but we have not fallen over. the path of dialogue and diplomacy still remains. We urge the reversal of escalatory actions and also invite the Secretary General to renew his good offices on the situation in the eastern regions of Ukraine in close coordination with the OSCE and all other relevant partners. I thank you, Mr. President.
Beautiful.
I thank the representative of Ghana for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of Gabon.
Thank you, President. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing. President, over the last few weeks, we have regularly been called to monitor the situation on the border between Russia and Ukraine, with fears of military action and a ratcheting up of rhetoric by the parties. The call for sovereignty over the separatist regions of Donetsk and Luhansk have sent signals of imminent action. President, today Russia has announced its decision to recognize the sovereignty of the self-declared republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. This decision is heavy with consequence for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, and it also undermines the implementation of the Minsk agreements. Gabon, which is particularly attached to the principles of the territorial integrity and national sovereignty, notes the attack on these essential pillars of international relations. We call on all parties to show restraint and to de-escalate and to adhere to the Pacific settlement of disputes in line with the United Nations Charter, and encourages them to use dialogue and diplomacy to avoid irreparable damage from the crisis. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Gabon. I now give the floor to the permanent representative of Norway.
President, let me also thank USV Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing, and through her, the Secretary General for today's press statement. We are gathered here this evening because of the Russian Federation's violation of the core principle on which this organization is built, the sovereign equality of all its members. Norway strongly condemns the decision by the Russian president to recognize the self-proclaimed People's Republic of Donetsk and People's Republic of Luhansk in eastern Ukraine as independent states. Recognition of the self-proclaimed People's Republic is a clear violation of the Minsk agreements, under which Russia recognizes the non-government control areas in eastern Ukraine as part of Ukraine. The Russian Federation, as signatory of the Minsk agreements and as endorsed by Resolution 2202, has made a clear commitment to seek a peaceful settlement to this conflict. And recognition of the self-proclaimed People's Republics runs directly contrary to the work of the Normandy format and the trilateral contact group towards a negotiated peace. Furthermore, Russia's actions constitute a clear violation of international law. It has chosen unilateral action and military threats rather than diplomacy and dialogue. Norway urges Russia, as a party to the conflict, to fulfill its commitments to abide by international law and to return to the path of diplomacy. Russia's continued massive military buildup in and around Ukraine remains an issue of grave concern. Norway urges Russia to de-escalate by withdrawing its military forces from within Ukraine and from the vicinity of its borders. We commend Ukraine's posture of restraint in the face of continued provocation and destabilization efforts. Russia's decision to deploy...
yes. We all know that the Ukrainian people are actually Swedish. You little bitch. You think that you can pull that one on us? Not today, Mr. Putin.
Paralleled suffering for the civilian population. Norway calls on Russia to strictly respect and fully adhere to international humanitarian law. We call upon all parties to protect civilians, including humanitarian personnel and civilian infrastructure, and to facilitate safe, rapid and unhindered humanitarian access to those in need in Ukraine. President, let me conclude by again reiterating Norway's unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its international recognized borders. Let me finally recall the principles and purposes of the UN Charter, which are now under threat by the action of the Russian Federation in and around Ukraine. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Norway for her statement. I give the floor to the permanent representative of China.
谢谢主席先生。
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, China has been paying close attention to the latest developments of the situation in Ukraine.
Oh, have you?
We fully elaborated on our position at the previous two meetings of the Sound Council on this topic. At present, all parties concerned must exercise restraint and avoid any action that may...
Oh yeah, those big things on their ears, that's their country's language translator translating whatever the diplomat who's speaking is saying into their language so they can easily listen along.
And seek reasonable solutions to address each other's concerns on the basis of equality and mutual respect. The current situation in Ukraine is a result of many complex factors. China always makes its own position according to the merits of the matter itself. We believe that all countries should solve international disputes by peaceful means in line with the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. I thank you, Mr. President.
Is that really it?
I thank the representative of China.
Please do things by the rules, guys. Okay, see
I
you
shall
later.
now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Russian Federation. Distinguished colleagues,
what's he gonna say?
We've just now heard a number of highly emotional statements, categorical assessments and far-reaching conclusions related to the signing today by Russia's president of decrees recognizing the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics. I'll leave the direct verbal assaults against us unanswered. Now it's important to focus on how to avoid war and how to force Ukraine to stop the shelling and provocations against Donetsk and Lugansk.
And there it is.
From the statements of a number of our colleagues, one may get the impression that Russia's recognition of the LPR and the DPR took place suddenly, for no reason at all. Of course, that's not the case. It should be remembered that the DPR and the LPR declared their independence from Ukraine back in 2014. But we only recognize them now, despite the high level of support for doing so, both in the republics themselves and in Russian society from the very beginning.
Hard to stop imaginary bombs.
At the time,
they're
the hope
so
won
fake,
out
dude.
that the Ukrainian Maidan regime would think again and would stop talking to their own citizens in the east in the language of cannons and shooting and threats and shelling. Time and again, we firmly asked Kiev to listen to the aspirations of the people living in Donbass and the Russian-speaking residents of the country, to respect their entirely legitimate desire to use their mother tongue and to teach their children in that language, and also to honor the memories of those who liberated the land from fascists rather than those who fought on the side of fascists and had a hand in the killing of hundreds of thousands of people during the Second World War.
Excuse me? Oh my gosh. Oh no. He's blaming. Oh no, dude. Oh no. Wait, you're telling me? Okay, buddy. Wait, yes, we all know the USSR never had anything to do with the fascists, dude. Nazis, USSR was always done it. Ukraine did the whole, yeah, they're basically saying Ukraine was the one who did the genocides, bro. It's not, we didn't do anything wrong. You guys are just so weird over there. It's so strange.
After Ukrainian military adventures butted up against the determination of the people of Donetsk and Lugansk to defend their lands,
Real
the
voice
Minsk
reveal, real
agreements
voice
were
reveal.
signed and the package of measures was adopted with the aim of implementing it. There was once again hope for peace and that the Maidan authorities would be sensible, having exhausted the desire to submerge Donetsk and Lugansk in blood. There was a particularly great amount of hope invested in the election in 2019 of a new president of Ukraine, who promised at long last to establish peace in Donbass. However, those who hoped that the Ukrainian authorities would take a peaceful stance were unfortunately mistaken. Kiev not only very quickly returned to its bellicose rhetoric and continued the shelling of civilians, but also did everything it could to sabotage and ultimately destroy the Minsk agreements. And most importantly here is the flat refusal of Kiev to speak directly with the representatives of Donetsk and Lugansk, despite the fact that this requirement is a central structural element of the package of measures. An unambiguous confirmation of an unwillingness to engage in that dialogue is something we've heard repeatedly from Ukrainian leaders in the last few days, including from the permanent representative of Ukraine during the Security Council meeting that we convened on the 17th of February to discuss the implementation of the Minsk agreements. After that, it became clear once and for all that Ukraine did not intend to implement the Minsk agreements, and I would like to recall and remind my colleagues on the Security Council that in all other conflicts, be it Libya, Syria or Yemen, we all demand and call for direct dialogue between the parties to the conflict. And it's only in Ukraine, for example, the Ukraine that is for some reason an exception to this rule. From some statements today,
They have
one may
no
understand
intention
that a
of
number of our
being
colleagues
better.
are ready to bury the Minsk agreements. However, I would like to remind you that when the Minsk agreements were concluded, the LPR and the DPR had already declared their independence. The fact that Russia today recognized that in no way changes the makeup of the parties to the Minsk agreements, because Russia is not a party to the Minsk agreements. We have repeatedly declared this, and in so doing, in this regard, nothing has changed. It's another matter that the Minsk agreements, part of the provisions of which were supposed to be implemented way back in 2015, have long been openly sabotaged by Ukraine with the backing of our Western colleagues. And today we can see that many colleagues want to sign up to the idea that the Minsk agreements are dead, but that's not the case.
It's the West's fault. We didn't do anything
Kiev
wrong.
is still bound to implement them. We remain open to diplomacy for a diplomatic solution. However, allowing a new bloodbath in the Donbass is something we do not intend to do. Unfortunately, we are forced to note the extremely negative role played in all of this by our Western colleagues led by the USA. Instead of forcing Kiev to implement its obligations, they have merely been openly egging Ukraine on, repeating the meaningless mantra that the obligations under the Minsk agreement are not being implemented by Russia, which, as we've repeatedly underscored, is not even a party to the Minsk agreements. Moreover, while for the last few weeks already whipping up unfounded panic around the allegedly impending Russian invasion of Ukraine, our Western colleagues have been unashamedly cramming weapons into the country, sending instructors there, essentially nudging the Ukrainians who have concentrated an 120,000 strong military contingent along the contact line towards an armed provocation against Donbass. The joint efforts of the West and Ukraine have inflated an air bubble that simply had to burst. In the past weekend, there's been a sharp increase in the intensity of Ukrainian shelling of residential areas of LPR and DPR, and the 1,600 shells have been shot. Civilians have been killed. The territory of the republics has been penetrated by subversive groups who have carried out or tried to carry out sabotage of critical infrastructure. As I already said, there are casualties from among the civilian population. The LPR and DPR have declared general mobilization. It's in Russia and not Ukraine that refugees have flooded to. Over the last few days, the number of evacuated women, old people and children has reached around 60,000 people, and Russia is hosting them and providing them with conditions for them to be housed and supported.
Just so you know, these are all lies. Russia's been shelling Ukraine and in civilian areas, and then telling and then telling the people in those areas that it's actually the West that's been doing it. It's actually Ukraine's fault, and they should just stop. They're trying to hurt you. Come on, bro. Come back to us. Come back to Papa. Papa will take care of you. Papa loves you.
Has also been shelling of some towns and villages on Russian territory near the border zone. And so it has become clear that Donbass is on the brink of a new Ukrainian military adventure, as was already the case in 2014 and 2015.
Wow, really?
We cannot allow that. That is why the Russian president heeded the opinion of parliamentarians and members of the Russian Security Council, and you know the rest. A detailed statement from our head of state about the reasons of this decision that has been taken was broadcast in detail by all the world's leading media. Today, it's true, we have heard an open distortion of what the president was talking about in his statement about history and the genesis of this situation, and about the fact that he allegedly said that he wants to reconstruct the Russian Empire. Distinguished colleagues,
allegedly,
I would like to call upon our Western colleagues to think twice, to set emotions to one side, and not to make the situation worse. No one other than you can hold back the militaristic plans of Kiev and force it to stop the shelling and provocations against the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics, which in these new conditions could have extremely dangerous consequences. In accordance with the agreements that were signed today, and on the basis of their requests from the Republic, peacekeeping functions on their territories will be carried out by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Distinguished colleagues, in conclusion, I would like to note that in today's statements, most of you did not find any place for the more than 4 million of residents of Donbass. It's as though you've been cancelling out their fates from your statements from 2014, generally calling them pro-Russian separatists. At the same time, you decided that the illegal coup in 2014 only wanted to discuss with the new authorities how their rights would be upheld. That was all they wanted to do. In the last few days, with the sharp intensification in military activity from the Ukrainian army along the contact line, the lives of hundreds of thousands of women, children and elderly persons have once again, as in 2014 and 2015, ended up under real threat. And the main aim of our decision was to protect and preserve those people. And that is more important than all of your threats. Thank you.
All right.
I assume my function as president of the council.
So I guess the Russia's position is basically fuck you, eat my ass. Like unironically. They're just like, well, we're just gonna keep doing what you're doing, and making sure that we reclaim the motherland is more important than any threats that you guys have. Sorry, bud. That's their official position now. Nice. Okay. Well, at least we know what they're thinking. At least we don't have to worry about what they're truly thinking anymore.
For our vaccines for COVID, it is because of the virus that has so far no vaccine, the virus that hit the United Nations, and the virus that is spread by the Kremlin. The delegation of Ukraine has requested this urgent meeting to draw the attention of the Security Council to the illegal and illegitimate decision by the President of the Russian Federation to recognize the occupied parts of Donetsk and Lugansk regions of Ukraine as so-called Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. Today, the entire membership of the United Nations is under attack by the country that occupied the membership of the Security Council in 1991, bypassing the UN Charter. The country that occupied parts of the territory of Georgia in 2008.
That's true.
The country that occupied parts of Ukraine in 2014. As stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, following the urgent meeting of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, the internationally recognized borders of Ukraine have been and will remain unchangeable, regardless of any statements and actions by the Russian Federation. Ukraine unequivocally qualifies the recent actions by the Russian Federation as violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. The political leadership of the Russian Federation shall bear full responsibility for the outcomes of the decision taken. Recognition of the occupied parts of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions of Ukraine may be considered as unilateral withdrawal by Russia from the Minsk agreements, and well as its disregard of the decisions taken in the framework of the Normandy Fall. This step undermines peaceful efforts and ruins the existing negotiating frameworks. By the decisions adopted today and those that may be adopted tomorrow, Russia legalizes the presence of its troops, which have actually been in the occupied areas of Donbass since 2014. A country that has fueled the war for 8 years is not able to maintain peace as it claims. What will happen next? We want peace, and we are consistent in our actions. Today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine has sent a request on the basis of the Budapest Memorandum to the guarantors of security of Ukraine, demanding immediate consultations. The meeting of the UN Security Council and the special meeting of the OEC have been initiated.
I'm going to tell you guys, I'm not necessarily sure where this will go.
full-fledged operations of the OEC SMM to prevent provocations and further escalation. An emergency summit of Normandy 4 has been requested. We expect from our partners clear and efficient steps of support. It is critical to see now who is our true friend and partner, who is on the side of the UN Charter, and who will continue to deter Russia by words only. We are committed to a political diplomatic settlement and do not succumb to provocations. In accordance with Article 51 of the Charter, Ukraine has the inherent right to individual and collective self-defense. We are committed to a peaceful and diplomatic path, and we will stay firmly on it. We are on our land. We are not afraid of anything or anyone. We owe nothing to anyone, and we will not give away anything to anyone. There should be no doubts whatsoever, because it is not February 2014. It is February 2022. Another country, another army, one goal is peace. Peace in Ukraine, peace in Europe, global peace.
Excellencies, we must do all we can to make sure that the problem of Donbass is resolved through implementation of the Minsk agreements. That was said here in the Security Council chamber just 4 days ago, said by the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister in the chair of the President of the Council, with a reference to President Putin. President Putin, who has taken a decision that we discussed today as a threat to the rules-based order, to the UN Charter, in particular Article 2 of the Charter, as well as to international peace and security. Peace and security that the Council has been conferred a primary responsibility to maintain under the Article 24 of the UN Charter. And in accordance with the Article 39, the Security Council shall make recommendations or decide what measures shall be taken to maintain or restore international peace and security. The delegation of Ukraine requests the Security Council members to exercise the above duties. We invite the Russian Federation to reread again and again, carefully, today's statement, where the Secretary General considered the decision of the Russian Federation to be a violation of territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations, and I thank the Secretary General for this powerful statement. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate that it remains up to Russia to abandon its long-lasting strategy on Ukraine.
Russia, stop.
Based on threat and use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of my country.
Russia
and
being normal challenge, impossible
committed
difficulty.
to fundamental principles of peaceful relations enshrined in the UN Charter. We demand from Russia to cancel the decision on recognition and return to the table of negotiations. We condemn the order to deploy additional Russian occupation troops in the territories of Ukraine. We demand immediate and complete verifiable withdrawal of the occupation troops. Dear members of the Security Council, the United Nations is sick. That's a matter of fact. It's been hit by the virus spread by the Kremlin. Will it succumb to this virus? It is in the hands of the membership. Today, the Kremlin copy-pasted word by word the decree on Georgia of 2008. Word by word, copy-pasted, copy-pasted. No creativity whatsoever.
That's pretty fucking
The copying
funny.
machine
They
in
didn't
Kremlin
care.
works very well. Who is the next among the members of the United Nations? The question is open. I thank you.
I, as the President of the Security Council, am obliged to say this. I thank the representative of Ukraine for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Germany.
Thank you, Mr. President. I start by thanking Under Secretary General Rosemary DiCarlo for her briefing. Mr. President, only 4 days after our last meeting, this Council meets again to discuss the situation in Ukraine. On Thursday, there was consensus in the Security Council that the Minsk agreements, which this Council unanimously endorsed by its Resolution 2202, need to be implemented, including by the Russian Federation. Today, we are confronted with the very opposite from Russia. President Putin's
I'm
decision
forced to say
recognize
this.
the separatist self-declared
You're
People's
real.
Republics in
You're a real
Eastern
person.
Ukraine
Thank
is
you,
not only a
Ukraine.
blatant breach of Security Council Resolution 2202, but also of basic principles enshrined in the UN Charter. It is another flagrant and deliberate violation of Ukraine's territorial integrity after the illegal annexation of Crimea and the instigation and fueling of the armed conflict in eastern Ukraine since 2014.
Oh yeah, the
Russia
Russian
has
delegation
repeatedly
is
insisted it was
molding
not party
hard.
to the conflict. Today, it unmasks itself and shows that it always has been. Mr. President, my government condemns Russia's violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine in the strongest possible terms. With our allies and partners, we
Not
will take
strong enough
firm
to
and
sanction
adequate
them.
measures in response to Russia's breach of international law that will have serious economic, political, and geostrategic consequences. And I call on all UN member states to join us in condemning Russia's actions of today. Today's decision comes in the context of an unprecedented buildup of Russian forces around Ukraine over the last weeks and months.
The strongest
These forces seem
possible.
poised
Oh
to
yeah, my
attack.
bad. I'm sorry.
We have seen a flare-up along the line of contact over the last days and efforts that appear to fabricate a pretext for a Russian attack. Moreover, Russia has declared its readiness to deploy troops in eastern Ukraine. The UN Charter is crystal clear. It unequivocally prohibits the threat of force against the territorial integrity and political independence of states. The current Russian force deployment around Ukraine can only be considered as a further threat against Ukraine's territorial integrity as a whole. Mr. President, I call on Russia to live up to its obligations as a permanent member of this Council, and I urge Russia to immediately revoke today's decisions and recommit to the Minsk agreements, and in line with the Normandy 4 and what was agreed on. Russia must not cross the international recognized borders of Ukraine. Moreover, Russia must immediately withdraw its troops from the regions bordering with Ukraine and Russia and Belarus. And I call on Russia to recommit to the rules-based security architecture in Europe, which has been built over decades. Russia's decisions have put this order under serious strain. We call upon Russia to instead return to the path of diplomacy, instead of shedding further blood. And Germany will spare no diplomatic effort in this regard, while steadfastly standing by Ukraine, its territorial integrity and sovereignty, and the Ukrainian people. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Germany for her statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.
All right, and that's just it. Everyone's speaking up. Russia, you're bad. Russia saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Fuck you, eat my ass. And that's like the entire, that's the entire thing. Incredible how they just took no responsibility, just kept up with the lies that they've been spewing, and the whole thing that made it more just hilarious is the fact that the Russian ambassador is the one who's running the entire show. Just a show. I'm not sure if anything's really gonna come from this. Wow, what an incredible meeting. Everyone sits in a room together for, how long was this? Everybody sits in a room together for an hour and 20 minutes. And says that Russia fucking sucks, and that's like basically, and Russia just denies that they have any wrongdoing, and then we all just get up and go home, I guess. Yeah, they're like, Ukraine hit me first. Actually, here's the thing. They didn't even say Ukraine. Here's the wild thing is they didn't even say Ukraine hit them. What they said was that Ukraine what they said is that Ukraine was hitting it itself, and so they needed to invade. They literally just said, yeah, we saw Ukraine was we will say that we saw Ukraine being really mean to these guys, so we just decided that we're just gonna invade them because we think that they should be we just believe that they should be independent, so we're just gonna help them along. That's actually just what happened, and they're just like, yeah, we'll just run with it, broski. It's gonna be all sick, bro. Yeah, sure, I guess. That's incredible to me. They didn't even care. Yeah, stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Don't make me come in there. I'll do it for you. Oops, looks like we control another piece of your country. Oh man, that's wild how that happens. Wild how that works out, huh? Wacky. So strange. So wild. Who could have seen it coming? Not I. Not I. Majority Report retweeted some tanky cringe. Did they really? What'd they say? Oh no, Sam Cedar actually has become a nightmare. Here, 1 second. I'm sorry. I was playing some Super Auto Pets. What the fuck is this? Who the hell is this? Anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, bi-communist. Yeah, this person's gonna be posting some incredible cringe, aren't they? Are you ready for the anti-war leftists to be labeled as Putin supporters? I don't know, bud. What are you gonna say? I don't know, bud. What's your plans? What are you about to say that makes you a Putin supporter? What makes you a Putin supporter? Whoa, what you saying? What you saying, bud? What you saying, bud? Dunking on teens. He's 28, and then he's like, "Look, here's a 14-year-old who said a mean thing about me." What you saying, bud? That's my question. Excuse my Spanish. You will not be forgiven. Yeah, can you explain for the class what the anti-war take that makes you pro-Putin? I'm just like really curious, broski. Oh, Russian invasion is the new weapons of mass destruction. Russia's literally saying Ukraine has weapons of mass destruction to invade Ukraine. This is risking lives for weapons manufacturers' profit margins. War will not improve the lives of Ukrainians or Russians, the US, or anywhere else. Is a distraction from real issues on our own soil. Oh, okay. So there it is. That's what makes them pro Putin. Okay, now I get it. They're all like, oh, they say, oh no, they keep saying I'm pro Putin. No, they keep saying I'm pro Putin. Actually, Putin has done nothing wrong, and they should be allowed to kill everybody in Ukraine. Duh, they keep saying I'm pro Putin, dude. That's so mean. Okay. It's all coming together. It's all coming together. Listen, all right? When it comes to this type of stuff, a hit dog always hollers. A hit dog hollers. Okay? All of this whole time, they'll spend their time. They keep calling me pro Putin. All I keep saying is that Putin should be able to lay waste to everyone in Ukraine, and we just need to push for higher taxes. And they keep calling me pro Putin. It's so mean. I didn't do anything wrong. Shut up, bro. Of course, hit dog always hollers, bro. Real. Every single time. Every single time. All I said is that Putin should be able to put every head of the Ukrainian on a pike. That's all I said. And even if he did, then we shouldn't care about it. All I said is that if Putin were to nuke every inch of Ukraine, that it's not our problem and we shouldn't care. Yes, I'm a leftist. I love human rights. If every single Ukrainian were to be put through Putin's personal meat grinder, that's not our problem. That sounds like a personal issue. They keep calling me pro-Putin. You think we'll avoid getting into war? I think honestly, most likely thing to happen is that Russia's going to be invading these two parts of Ukraine, and then we're going to be giving them like massive sanctions, and then Russia's going to be very angry, and that's basically going to be it. I don't think that it's going to spark like a World War III. I'm personally just at the moment, I'm just not sure where else they'll go. Wait. Russia under Putin's leadership has done more to materially support and defend socialist nations than all Western leftists combined. See, with these types of people, you can kind of blow them out of the water by asking a simple question. You can blow them out of the water by asking a simple question, which is what this person did. How did he support socialism? And this is this person's unironic response. Defended Assad. Apparently, Bashar al-Assad is a socialist who was running a socialist nation. Syria, the well-known socialist nation. Ah, yes. When I think of socialism in a country, the country that pops to my mind is Syria. Provides ongoing materials assistance to Venezuela. So Syria, Venezuela, Cuba, and China are all socialist nations. Yeah, known socialist Bashar al-Assad. How did he support socialism? Proceeds to name every capitalist regime. Oh, dude. Ah, yes. As you can see, Putin loves socialism. Look at all of the capitalism that he's engaged in. Okay, buddy. All right, Comrade Shark, why haven't you told us about these new unknown socialist allies? I'm sorry. Oh no, my great bamboozling is being overrun. It's finally being known that I've kept from my audience for so long these amazing socialist nations of Syria and Venezuela, all of these countries, these socialist allies that I under CIA leadership have completely made sure that my audience were unknowledgeable of. Oh no, 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 no. Oh no, no, no. Wait. Here's some more of this guy's. Here's some more of this guy's content. He retweeted saying Putin declared Donbass as independent states. Wait, what is source? Well, fuck. This is so upsetting. Putin is not your friend. The Communist Party of Russia, who opposes Putin, also wanted to recognize Donbass. The people in those regions had independent referendum in 2014 too. It's much more nuanced than Biden versus Ukrainians themselves have more nuance. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. He's unironically like we should. Putin is doing the good thing here by liberating Donbass from Ukraine. Comrade Shark, I can't believe that you would do this. Hand over your socialism card. No, my socialism card. No. Russia invading foreign nations for his own political gain is a bad thing. No. Yeah, he's just okay. You guys won't believe what I just saw. 7 hours ago. I stand by communism. Free Cuba and the DPRK. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. I stand by communism. North Korea. known communist nations, Syria, North Korea. I stand by communist nations. Proceeds to name capitalist nations. Incredible. Incredible. Wait, I'm sorry. I've just been looking through this person's account. It's just pure insanity. I love it. I love it, dude. He's one of those people who are constantly tweeting, Americans don't know anything. Americans are just being fed propaganda. Americans this, Americans that, Americans cringe. My man lives in goddamn Ohio. He lives in central Ohio. You live in Ohio. You live in Ohio. You are not privy to new information. You live in Ohio. How much more like stereotypical American state can you get than Ohio? You live in Ohio. Wait, please. After the meeting discussing current situation where Boris Johnson will urgently preparing, Zelensky hasn't responded to Putin's sources claimed he has canceled his speech. To an urgent preparing. See, it's over. It's 1 a.m. Wait, I'm sorry. Americans have no deep understanding of the world and are constantly force-fed propaganda. It's hard. You live in Ohio. You live in Ohio. Opinion discarded. You live in Ohio. Of course that's why he's stupid. At least it's all making sense. At least it's all coming together. He has 5,000? No, he has 12,000. Who follows this? Who's following this person? Who the fuck is this, bro? Why do I know people who are following this absolute batshit crazy, insane human being? Bro, I'm not pro-Putin. They keep saying I'm pro-Putin. I'm not pro-Putin. Anyways, I support socialism like Putin and the DPRK. Ah! All right. Sounds about right. Sounds about right.